Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Norman. I'm an Inuk woman born and raised in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador. My family ties are to Northwest River and Nain, Nunatsiavut on my dad's side, and the Bonavista area of Newfoundland on my mom's side. Very excited to be moderating this panel, and it's a privilege to be here with three talented designers, and I can't wait to hear more about your practices. So I'm wondering if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work.
All right. I am Thomassie Mangiok. I live in Inuit, northernmost community of Quebec. I'm a full-time school administrator, but Quebec, he said Quebec is very big. He's right. When I have the chance, I work on graphic design. So either my focus right now, and for a while it has been to enrich our culture. There's a lot of beautiful things from other cultures and parts of the world, and we haven't been as productive as we can. So I'm trying to contribute and exposing or sharing a part of our culture through design. So that's I'm part-time when I can.
Very nice. Hi, I'm Mark Bennett, and I'm a graphic designer. I work full-time as a graphic designer, but I'm also in architecture school, and I live in Toronto. I'm originally from Newfoundland, Western Newfoundland, and mixed identity. My mom's from Labrador, Nunatsiavut, and so I'm based in Toronto, and I work a lot with galleries and artists, doing book designs, didactic kind of work like that, and exhibition-type design. I've done a lot of things over the years in working with different collaborators and different groups and institutions and so on. I feel like I could talk about any number of those, but maybe that's just a good way to start, and I'll let you introduce yourself. Yeah.
I'm Coco Apunnguaq Lynge, and I am a visual storyteller first, and then I'm usually illustrating for books. That's at least what most of my work is in. I have a background in fashion design and computer graphic arts and multimedia design, so everything has to do with the design for what I've been learning. I'm based in Denmark, and I try to the projects that I really enjoy working on are usually indigenous, because then I get to learn more about my own background, and that's more because I feel like I've lost it while I was growing up, because I was growing up without my Greenlandic dad and with my Danish family. So, yeah.
And I can relate to that too, by growing up outside of my region and wanting to kind of connect back and using design and art as a tool that way. So it's very similar. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, guys. And I think that segues into my first question quite nicely, is how your Inukness or your Inuit culture shows up in your work. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I suppose I'll use that as an example, or that. You'll see that, you can imagine living up north. I think I'll use, I suppose, a bit of your background as well in Greenland. Inuit, we don't have many resources. For example, no trees. We have to get our wood from the shore, or we had to before. Now they arrive by boat now. So we work with limited resources. So often, and then we're inspired by our environment. There's a lot of contrast, things that just pop out because what we make stands out. I use my syllabics or my characters from my board game, for example. Things just pop out, and often designs are minimalistic. I have a friend who makes a kayak, and we're starting to bring it back to our community. He was telling me that even in Greenland, he told me to pronounce it as kayak, because I think Southern people are more used to the term kayak or word kayak. We pronounce it as kayak. Yeah, so he's aware. He's informed. They even use less resources to make a kayak in Greenland compared to us in Nunavik. So your question was, oh, yeah, so I was saying, so when I make my design, I keep these in mind. I keep in mind my surrounding area, having limited resources, trying to think of what I see, what I experience in Ivik, and then showing it. I think also there are few people who inspire me in my community because we live in a small community. We have one of which is my mother right here. Her artwork, her artwork are so direct to the point, just to make it. Or my aunt's husband, Mattiusi, he's here in the building. You might have seen his work, where there's often transformation of movement, or a few things that are together, showing that we're a part of something. We're a part of nature. It's a half man, half person, some animal or something in the nature. So keeping in these, I try to show it. Often round, as you can see over here, round comes back. Yeah, exactly. There's often a movement.
I mean, it sounds like you're talking about adaptability, which I feel like, to me, that's what I think or how I like to be as best as possible, just take on different projects. I feel lucky that I work with a lot of artists and curators that, as a designer, like I'm not an artist, but by listening and learning, taking time to just educate myself and learn through them. What I learned from them finds its way into how I think about design and design processes and so on. So I think in some ways that's just more so a form of adaptability. That would be my nickness. Yeah.
I think to me, when it comes to using like the same very organic shapes, I find that to be very I try to use those because I found them to be very close to what we have in the indigenous and Inuit space. It's very natural, and I guess that's just like what comes to my expression whenever I try to work. But also, like, depending on which on the projects, I always try to see if I can sneak in some of my own background in there, but sometimes it's just not called for. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I was wondering if you all could share a bit more about your design practice and maybe what you're working on right now, or anything coming up in the future that's exciting. Yeah, what are you working on?
Right now, I'm actually working on 2 children's books, and they're both from Canadian publishers. I don't know, for some reason I have a really good relationship with Canadian publishers. And then I also have very recently made an Inuit character for another creature book, but that's based in England. So that's going to be very interesting to see. And yeah, let's see. Some Christmas-related stuff, because for some reason, what I see with all the jobs I get related to Inuit are either related to, focused on horror stories or creatures or Christmas as a theme. I don't know what you guys get.
Yeah, you do a lot of character designs, and it must be a fun place to play, right? Which I have a totally different kind of design practice, and I do, like I mentioned, I do quite a few book designs, and I really enjoy that, but I'm doing a lot more research in Inuit architecture. So to me right now, just learning about historical structures, but then finding new ways to think about how we take cultural uses and what's missing from buildings up north, and just experimenting in some of these designs. I don't really have much examples yet. There is one image up here that is a structure that's meant to be like more of a pavilion, exploring identity, but from a design perspective, it's the architecture right now that I'm most excited about. I feel like I'm totally forgetting a lot of projects, and I'm sure we'll meander back to them, but more so just the category that I'm interested in rather than specific ones right now.
Well, first, seeing both of your work, they're inspiring. Thank you. It's nice to hear what you're doing. And a fun thing too, when we were talking earlier, I had said that I wanted to start working on things that I believe in, things that come from me. So I'm at home. I'm working on also children's books, thinking of my kids and the kids I get to work with at school. I'm not looking for yet a publisher at the school too. I'm also trying to look for funding so that I can hire people locally to make more content. There's not much content from our region because there's many Inuit dialects. What I want is more from my community so that our students our kids can have some material to read, to go through. So that's what I'm working on, and I really want to get back to my cartoon. I started many years ago. I haven't had a chance to finish. So those are what I'm focusing on at the moment.
Sorry, I forgot some things too. Usually most of the projects that I work on are under NDA, so I can't really share too many details, but aside from the books, I also have upcoming exhibitions around the Greenlandic houses starting next year, which are for kids. And one of the images are actually displayed up here, but it's like the one with puffins on it. So the style is going to be very catered towards children and very soft and pastel-y.
Nice. I want to add to that too, because I just thought of something. I'm doing a lot more typography lately, and there was some sketches that you probably just saw, and I was asked to do a visual identity for this Indigenous podcast that is going to be coming out next year, and it's a cross-Canada type project. Doing the type design based off of these letter experiments, I think there's a lot of room to play with typography right now to get away from, typical sans serifs and just try to like escape the grid system of what's expected in terms of design. So I'm really just excited to play with typography and try to get as many of those types of projects going.
Awesome, thank you. I was wondering if there was any projects you've done in particular that were your favorite, or if anything has revealed, something of importance to you. Just if you could speak to maybe a special project that's close to your heart.
I would say Inuit, doing the book design for Inuit. That was at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, Qinnirajaattuq, a few years ago. That was probably my first big catalog design. And, the curators, Heather and Krista Siniak and Kubluziak. It was the first time working with a fully creative curatorial team that are Inuit. So right away, that just kind of like jumps forward of not having to explain or think about things in a certain way. But also having that opportunity to work with them. So I think that book to me was very important. And also the content, we talked about this earlier when we were just hanging out about design. And sometimes, you do projects that are non-Indigenous in content. And then when you do projects that you get to work with more Indigenous content, at least for me, the design becomes a lot more, there's a lot more to play with in terms of how you come up with hierarchies of information and layouts and positioning of language, what you're trying to say through forms and through colors and so on, to kind of go beyond the expected. And so that project was really important to me, yeah.
To me, the project that probably taught me most was actually a project that I went through while I was in school, while I was at my getting my bachelor's degree. So we had to go through the entire process of designing a fall-like creature in 2D, which means just you sit and draw it, you design it out, you do so many different examples of it. And then you try to translate it into 3D, where you learn the entire process of modeling and shading and texturing, which was it taught me that it can be very scary in the beginning, especially when you get a prompt that's very specific. But I even had a breakdown, while I was getting taught by this amazing person, and she was like, "Just relax. It's okay. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to have too many expectations on yourself." And you had the project was more so you had to make a very realistic character. It is actually the bear, the naked bear behind me. Yeah, the naked bear Peanut. I've named him. But yeah, I made some because I didn't initially do realistic style. I went back to just going into very stylized stuff, and then from there I picked one of the designs and tried to translate it into a more realistic style with muscles and figuring out the entire build of it, and then going from there to modeling. And I realized then, okay, I like modeling, but I don't like shading. I don't like all the more technical stuff. So, but I also realized, okay, so drawing is the way I have to go. That's where I am at. This is what I want to do, but I still want to do some 3D sometimes, but not predominantly. So it taught me a lot about myself and my style and what I lean more towards.
There are some projects I go back to in my head and I feel bad about because I struggled a few times, but I think a project that gave me where I felt that I opened the door or broke a few things that were keeping me limited was, I think, making a calendar actually for Nunavik parks. Because I worked on the layout, creating a template, but also the drawing on the back. I think sometimes when we're used to certain things, when we're used to doing things that are expected, it's hard to break that. So I had to relearn how to do less. So I ended up illustrating, doing less, because before I was also making clean designs with clear lines, and I broke that. My lines were thinner and thicker in some parts, and I ended up really liking the result. So that for me is close to my heart.
Amazing, thank you. And Thomassie, wanted to ask you specifically, you were in the news recently because you were one of the 4 artists who worked on the new Toonie. It's very exciting. Ooh, I haven't seen it in person, so I'm genuinely very excited to see this. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about that project and how it came about, and yeah, just how you're feeling about it since it's so fresh.
It feels great, overwhelming when I saw the coin. So I think, I don't know how I was chosen exactly, but I think it's also because I worked with ITK. I made a few things for them, and then I was told that it would be a collaboration with 3 other Inuit artists, so from 4 Inuit regions in Canada. We were working together. The challenges were working from distance. Normally, if we're going to work together, it works very well when we're close, when we can share our ideas, share our work. Now, it was 4 Inuit who are used to different mediums. So those who draw, who paint, or I use my computer. So us working from distance with internet issues, sometimes phone issues, working on different mediums. It was a bit challenging, but we found ways to put our work together. What was really good about the team we had is that everyone was open to make changes, to make modifications, and then we ended up with the image you saw. I'm sorry, I did not put it here. The common theme is being close to nature, especially if you see an Inuit community. It is at the shore, like close to the water. The water is always full of resources, may it be animals, vegetation, wood. We get our water. Water is a wonderful thing. You'll see the coin is blue in the middle. When it freezes, everything else, when it gets hard, it sinks. But water turns into ice and floats. It's a really cool thing. Anyway, and we chose Qinnirajaattuq because we hear of her story anywhere we are in the Arctic. It's a common story we have, and we thought the importance she has in our culture because we want to respect the nature, animals. It is when we're growing up, when we start to understand, we're told if you kill an animal, you have to eat it. We have respect to animals, towards animals right away. We depend on them. We have to kill them in order to survive. For example, growing up, vegetables or green leaves and salad, I thought they were part of decoration. Like, I ate meat, we ate meat. Anyway, just that part. And then we had agreed on how to, you were talking about typefaces, I think, earlier, fonts. We used a popular one. It sounded like, unfortunately, we had to modify it. And then the Inuit, uluk, there's a uluk, for uluk on the side, or uluit. It's a knife, traditionally made for women, but anybody can use them. Each design represents each region. So uluk, that is most popular per region. So they're represented on the side.
Awesome. Congratulations. It's a beautiful coin, and it's such a unique project. I was wondering if, kind of thinking along those lines about collaboration, if any of you have, worked with other artists or other designers, and if there's a kind of a favorite collaboration in your work. Or do you work with others very often at all?
Rarely. I don't really have a project that comes to mind. Like, I usually work with art directors, so they will give me notes. But other than that, it's rarely a collaboration.
Yep. I'll use a magazine by Grilled Cheese as an example. I was very fortunate to have the freedom for the first time to work with any artist I wanted to in Nunavik. And so that means I could find authors, I could find illustrators, and I ended up working with some really good ones. Progressive, traditional. It was a great mix. So we made 2 magazines, one for younger kids and older kids, and in 3 languages. Something we're proud of in our community, in a way, is where our school, I'll go back to our school, we teach 3 languages, Inuit, and then as they grow older, English or French, along with Inuit. So I thought it was representative of what we're going through right now in Nunavik. So 3 languages, authors and artists from different parts of our region. And we did have the distance as an issue, but because we had a good amount of time to work together, it worked quite well. So I'm proud of that work.
Let's try this again. There we go. Yeah, I feel like my practice is very, very collaborative. Whether it is book designs or taking artists' work and trying to present that in a gallery space or beyond, I can't do that work without other people. So to me, I think it's the backbone of the work. In terms of projects, I mean, I even mentioning Inuit there a moment ago, that one was highly collaborative. But there was a project I did last year for the National Gallery. It was a book design for the Qinnirajaattuq exhibition. And it was 300 pages, 3 languages. It took a year to do. So, just a lot of meetings, a lot of slowly stepping towards ideas and moving on from things. I just think that there's no other way to do it. I mean, I think this process, we were talking about earlier too, as a group outside, and I'm sure that would be another interesting topic to get into at some point, and just how we all have different processes. Yeah.
I actually just reminded a couple of projects, but those were while I was either in school or I worked at a studio. So there's most of the stuff we do when we are working in concept art studios, we collaborate with a lot of other artists just to get the best design done for characters for the games that are played around in the world. And we can it's either that we work with one other artist or there's an entire team of artists just to make one character. For example, there's one image up here that I worked on with 2 other artists for the game Hunt Showdown, which is a shooter, first-person shooter. And the process was, it's always amazing to work with other artists when you're on the same level. You can always bounce ideas off of each other and figure out, okay, what's the right direction to go into for the specific character brief that you get, because you always get a little brief where they want to, they have this backstory for one character, and then you have to figure out the design for it, how a person would look with this backstory. So those were amazing characters to work with the people that I work with at Mood Visuals in Copenhagen, while I was still hired there, because I quit being there just to do my own thing and not to work too much within realistic art style, because I could feel too much horror and too much realistic art styles are very draining for me. And that's also probably why I bounced back to doing a lot of very sweet, also organic shaped characters and illustrations. And then there was also another project that came to mind, which is Apex Point. That was the graduate short film that I did with my teammates or my classmates, which is, I can't even describe the project. I can't even show you, but trust me, it looked amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned processes, and because I want to ask about your process and your work, and if you could speak to, what that looks like for you, because each and every one of you have a very different practice. So I'm curious to see how that plays out and how your process is.
I like doing a lot of research, and again, when I work with artists and curators, a lot of it is just asking questions to try to truly understand what an artist is trying to do in a space, and then if it's turning into a book, and then what is the curator trying to express, and asking a lot of questions, talking a lot. I think really getting to know people is very important to me as well. I don't really like to work with people if the vibe doesn't seem right, investing time into understand each other first, which I think is very important, and then taking time to research, experiment. There's a very old school graphic design way where you come up with 3 concepts and you have a certain process that's expected, but I don't like to do that anymore. I feel like I'd rather invest time into one main idea with some variations and just keep going until it gets to a point where we're all happy. I think talking a lot of just casual conversation. A friend of mine, he's a curator, just said that's their perception of how I work as a designer, that I spend a lot of time just talking about tangential ideas, and that brings like as you said, bouncing ideas off people brings out different ideas and then leads to different paths. Yeah.
Yep, I think I'll learn from you and talk more with the clients because I agree. I do a bit of research so that I have something to work with, or else my work is from my perspective. I like the color blue, so I'll use the blue to avoid that. So I collect some images, some content I might need as inspiration or to use as foundation, and after that I start making sketches. And the sketches I share with the client, and then with sketches that are preferred, that are chosen, I make a few variations, and then I just try to stick to 1, 2, 3. Start with sketches, variations, and after the variations, a more concrete work from that. Just improving it or adapting it to what they want exactly. Or else we just work spending too many hours before we go towards the image that is expected or that is wanted. But talking more before I make sketches, I think I'll do that. I do it a bit, but maybe not enough.
I think the process depends very much on if it's character design for me or if it's illustration, because it all depends on what the purpose of the design is. And obviously, like both of you mentioned, it's both research first and then it's inspiration, finding images that might vibe with the right mood for the specific character or the illustration. And then I start doing the drafts and sketches, and then I try to send them out to the client to figure out, okay, so is this the right direction, or do I have to go in somewhere else? So it's always a conversation with the client. And then after that, if they're greenlit, you just go into rough colors and then what do you call it? Other stages of the entire process. I lose my mind sometimes. Like I lose words. But yeah, and then after doing your finish, I usually get some smaller tweaks in the end from the client if there's something really specific they want out of it. But yeah, most of it is research and figure out the mood.
Thank you. I didn't know if you had something to add there. No, you're just holding it. Okay. All good. Your work all seems to span a lot of different, I guess, mediums, or like whether it's designing for books or coins or characters or, buildings, logos, flags. So I was wondering if there was any type of design work that you haven't done yet but are maybe very interested in trying.
I mean, I hinted at this earlier that because I'm in architecture school, that to me is where it's exciting right now. By doing research on older Inuit structures and then modeling those in 3D, and then from that, I'm working on a project. I talk mostly more about commercial stuff or commission stuff, but building out some of my own ideas now where I want to think a bit more futurist in some of these designs, and have a place to play that can just be a bit more creative and not weighed down by certain aspects of the past. And so it's going to be at a certain point a combination of graphic design meeting architecture and designing like a larger broadsheet. So it's a self-driven research, design, and kind of, I guess, a more art-based project. And I think that's what's mostly on my mind lately. Yeah.
I think for me, because I sit so much in front of the screen all day in and out, I find that I try to, whenever I have time, I try to go more into traditional mediums. So working a lot with gouache, I think that's how you say it. And then for the future, we want to do more exhibitions, working more with fabrics and embroidery and beading, because that's more traditional, and then I get to work with my hands more in a different way. I think that's more like that's what I want to do or find more interesting right now.
You bring up a good point. I did Sonia's workshop yesterday about the like the little fish skin pouches, and it's my first time doing beading, which is a lot of fun. But also just getting that new material, I have a bunch of new ideas now that I want to play with in terms of like model scales of architecture. So I think getting back to traditional forms, like it's always good to experiment that way. And as someone who lives in Toronto, there are community events with the Toronto Inuit Association there, but yeah, just trying out more traditional type techniques is really nice.
I agree. I think I'm on the same page where I want to use my hands more on like material. In my community, they do lithography, printmaking. So there's something that I want to do more, that I want to start anyway, because I see my mother, I see other community members or elders doing it, and finally we should be getting our center to do that. So I think that's something that I'll be getting into once we have the space to do it. Yeah, because I'm on the screen all the time.
What do you think the field needs for Inuit to become designers? And I think also relatedly, do you have any advice to give young Inuit who might be considering going into graphic design?
We actually talked about this a little bit earlier, and I don't think any of us knew that the creative field was an option. So we grew up wanting to be in other fields than the creative. I always wanted to be a fashion designer because that was the closest thing that I could be to creative every day. Later on, finding out, oh, okay, so I can actually sit and draw all day and actually get paid for it. So that was always like mind-blowing when I found that out. And I think that was only because of school that later on in my, like at age 18 or so, that I found out that, okay, that's an option. Yeah.
I wanted to be a garbage man because that was like, we were talking about this earlier, like you look around you, like I grew up in a town of 3,000 people, your town was smaller, but it's like, what are the people around you doing? And, you know, I was really young at that point, but I had no idea what design was, you know, and I had no idea what architecture was until even later in life. So to me, I think education access is very important. Obviously, things are changing a bit now because, of course, we have the internet. So, you know, kids are Googling and watching the most random YouTube videos when they learn about this stuff. But I think education on both sides of more academic thinking and then education access to more traditional ways for anyone who's more of like an urban Inuk or living outside. And, you know, and at the same time, if you live in a small town, having access to go travel, to go see places and so on. But I think the biggest thing is, yeah, education access and straight up just encouragement, you know, like, yeah, I remember in high school, most of the STEM-based kids were getting like, okay, you're going to become like this, you know, science-based job, but there was no design or nothing to do with the creative field. You know, there's just like artists, to be an artist or whatever. So I think encouraging people to get into these paths, just straight up that way.
Yep, the most popular choices of job opportunities we thought were when we were kids: policeman, loader truck driver, cashier, because that's all we saw. Interpreter, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we're from small communities, so we recognize that. And I agree with you. I think what's nice about what is happening right now is that we're exposing our youth to production, any type of production. And there's a book that just came out not too long ago. It's nice to see that happening, where we have artwork being turned into something, my work becoming more accessible, or accessible through, let's say, the coin or apps and whatnot. And our youth are seeing that, so they're starting to see it is possible they can do or make something that can become a source of income. But I think what's still important right now is to show them or to explain to them how can this become a career, like how can they make a living out of it? Because we can mention, okay, you can draw and make a living out of it, but there's also still the question of how what is the process they have to follow? How much do they charge, or how does it work? How do you protect your work? These type of things are still very new. So we should share these with our youth.
You know, you all mentioned the youth, and I think you're all very good role models, and I love that you have your son here, and you can see like he can grow up knowing that you know, art and design is a viable option and is a viable career. So thank you all, and thanks to everyone for bringing their children. It's so good to see. We have just under 15 minutes left, I believe, so I was going to open it up to the floor for questions. So I'll come around with the mic.
Of course, I have a question. And also, Thomassie, I want to say that your keyboard is the best. The one on the phone, I love it. It's so good.
The one I made when we programmed it, we didn't have an Android phone, so it ended up not working. On the simulator, it worked quite well. On the physical phone, it didn't work well. So I'll get back to that and improve it later.
Good. But it's amazing. I love it. I wish I had a computer keyboard that was like that. But I work for Tumivut magazine, which is an Inuit English and French language magazine. And out of necessity, we've only ever had non-Inuit designers. And I find it very difficult to find Inuit designers to work with us, even now that I have an ample budget to play with, which I didn't when I started. I had nothing. But I'm just wondering, how do we find you all? Like, what, and why are you always busy on other things?
I think because the community is so small within design and artists always know an artist. So if somebody's like occupied, it's always really good to just ask, okay, so do you have anybody else you could recommend? Or a list, because that always helps, because people, like like-minded people always collect together.
I think you should take the three of us on the road on a trip across the north to do, like, I'm kind of joking, but also serious, that kind of thing needs to happen, to have, like, here's a few different designers and do workshops and stuff with kids and youth and, you know, even older folks, just to show, like, okay, this is the variety, actually, and there's even more. But yeah, to get people understanding that this is there, and then to connect us, and then, of course, you know, the whole Inuit Futures group and everyone involved. The people who can access funds, you know, for people to get training or get education. I think that's kind of what needs to happen.
Coming here and seeing other people's work, yours, the others that we saw, wow, they're here and they're. I think living in a small community where that doesn't give us much access to outside, because let's say just to go down south, it's quite expensive. To meet other artists is for us is expensive. So meeting people here showed me that there's a lot of people to work with, but compared to the number of people that are in design, where as I said, we're not too many. And why are we busy? Just myself. I have a full-time job, and then I do this when I can.
You know, I get asked a lot over the last few years to do exhibition design, book designs, and so on. So when I heard about the exhibition that you've worked on that opened last night, I was like, who did the exhibition graphic design? I'm very excited to meet the designer. And, you know, I was like, okay, there's one more of us at least, you know, because you know, we talked about burnout as well. Like, there's just so many projects, and I want to do them all. But, yeah, if you guys know of other people too, like, I'm constantly looking to, okay, good. And then, you know, connect us. So then even if it's like, oh, I can hire you to do a small project, or if you want to learn, like to just even do Zoom calls and stuff. It's very accessible. So I think like I'm dying to find someone else to bring into the mix to give work to and to kind of teach. And I was talking with Sebastian Aubin yesterday. We haven't met in person yet, but we've known of each other, and we were talking about even passing the torch as he wants to do more arts-based things and trying to find other people. And he was just like, yes, there's not a lot of us as an Indigenous designer. So, yeah.
So what I'm looking forward to is that perhaps, I don't know if we could benefit from your list, or now at least I have you two as a contact, because when we work on something, we need people who are specialized in certain things. It's the projects, they progress much better. We get better results. So I look forward to working with more Inuit.
And I want to say too, it's one thing to do the work, but then also have a safe group of people that you can give feedback and get feedback from is very important. I think working a lot in straight up very white institutions, as a designer, I want feedback, but then sometimes people are afraid to give it, or there's like they won't give the right feedback, and I feel like just like having working with a group of Inuit curators, it kind of just gets beyond that, and you just move on to the next thing, and you get into the just focusing on the true feedback you need. And I think graphic design can be so open, but there's still like good design and bad design, whatever that can look like, and just essentially try to help people make good work.
Hi. I find Inuit designer has like challenges over regular designer. First of all, they often have to work with 3 languages here in Quebec and 2 languages maybe elsewhere. And also there's few options of fonts, so you probably ended up always designing your own font. So is there ways or ideas to facilitate that, or what do you think?
You want to go first? Hi, Dodo.
Hi.
Okay. So on my end, I'm finally very close to. I'm in the process of closing my company because there were too many challenges. As you said, I get my documents in French. Often, this is for a lot of Inuit a third language. So it is a challenge when I have to produce content. Let's say I have to make a magazine. I have to somehow cramp Inuktitut in syllabic. The words are long, and then in French and English the words are shorter, so it's easier to work with. Or, I mean, they have different look. So that extra challenge. So for the same number of, let's say, content, let's say, magazine in French and English, compared to a magazine in 3 languages, one of which is Inuktitut, that has words and sentences that look completely different. So it offsets my workload. I ended up working more for maybe the same amount of money. So that challenge, the government documents I get in French, it's a lot of work. So because of that, all kinds of challenges, not having, let's say, if I worked in Montreal, if I was based in Montreal, I would have access to bookkeeping or like an accounting firm, or I would have access to people that have specific skills I need to help me. I didn't have that in a small community, and that was back then when internet was quite bad. It's good now, but still, I've already made my steps to just to be done with it, so I can work on my own stuff. And also the typeface. I'm quite thankful to the group who made Inuttitut, because before that it was hard to read words in Inuktitut in syllabic. I ended up making my own, and I plan to make more to have more options. And there's thanks to other people too who made different types, but typefaces. But yeah, I agree that we need more.
I don't really have much to add other than, I mean, of course, there's the syllabics and the Romanized version. I think syllabics is beautiful. I can't read it, so as a designer, that's a challenge. But at the same time, for using typefaces, fonts, I just kind of use whatever's out there. And yes, there's limited amounts right now, and it would be nice to see someone invest into creating that. I know there's been some over. You're kind of saying something, I think.
My French language speaking designer does my Inuktitut, and she creates paragraphs in ways that destroy the meaning of the text.
Yeah.
So what Thomassie is saying about the design aspect of using syllabics versus English, and then the calculation of, my mental calculation is English times 3 for syllabics. But the lack of typeface, and the typeface that we do have are made by non-Inuit and owned by non-Inuit. So it's hard to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this brings up another
you guys
good.
are into it.
It brings up another good point, though, about using typefaces. And yes, translators get paid for to translate, but there almost needs to be like another job in between that looks at it in a more holistic way of, and that's what you do by the looks of it. But to make sure there's more cohesion in that. And I suppose at the end of the day, it's like having funds. But even translators are really tapped out, you know, like I know bigger projects I've worked on, it takes like a long time to get things done because they're just busy, right? So I suppose it's just a capacity issue and more funding. I don't really have a simple answer, you know, it's almost beyond design.
Can I just add to that? Because I know that it's a like top-on difficulty on it, but that also makes it like you're so good at it. And the Inuit designers that we have that can actually do that is just we're so privileged that we actually have people that can navigate the different languages, navigate the styles of the different languages, even though maybe not understanding the language. You still see some parts of it being able to navigate it. And when you work with the non-Inuit, that's the, like, so I feel so privileged that we actually have it. And we do have it also in Galashnunat. We have quite a lot of designers, Inuit designers, who can navigate Galashlisut. So we just have to, I think we have to talk it up. We need more people working with it. We need to use the people that work with it to also have the money flow in that direction to make it possible to work in that direction. But I think accessibility and what you said about making lists or making it accessible and teaching youngsters to develop the skill and to engage with that skill, I think is a key point of the things that you've been saying. So I just wanted to add that.
It gives me an idea too that when I get asked to do a next big catalog, to bring in that person, because even for me it's a bit of a disconnect because I usually work with a project manager or an editor, and that goes to the translator, and then it comes back to me. I don't really get a chance to. I haven't worked with them, and I think it should be a little closer naturally. So it's good that it's happening there, but in Greenland. But I haven't had that privilege. But that's what I'm going to push for now. Good idea.
Do we have? Oh, here we go.
Hi, I just wanted to ask there, for the work I do, I get to work with artists and designers every so often, but I never really get to talk with them directly. Like, it's always through a project manager, an art director, an art manager, and maybe that's for good choice or not, but I always curious to know what kind of like information would you like from someone who's a client in terms of what it is that they're looking for, and what do you not want? Because I always feel like I'm either under-explaining and over-explaining, and I want to be able to kind of respect the craft and what you guys bring to the work. And so I guess that's it. What do you want?
Okay, so I already know where you work. So I know that you're an author. I sometimes actually do have the privilege of working with the author and building a relationship with them, because then I get to know them and their mindset and what they kind of want out of it without them being too nitpicky. I think as an artist, it's always nice to get feedback, but it also depends on the feedback, because if it's very specific and small, it can be very taxing, because just the small things are tough. But if it's the broad, like mood, or this character has to be more in this direction, like they have to be more stern or look more intimidating. That's always like, because it's a very loose description of a character instead of like going directly in and picking small things. Because picking out small things can always make a design tilt out of what it's intended to be. So that's my best way of kind of describing an illustrator-author relationship. But you can always always ask as the author to be in contact with the illustrator, because they should be able to benefit from it in the end. So just request it. I know you should be able to.
I think simply more information is better. Over-explain, and if you're soft about it in a way that's not overbearing, I'd rather know a lot more about a project than try to get it out of you, because it's like, that's back to the research thing, asking questions. So the more you can explain, we can parse it, and it's up to us to kind of choose what we think works. That's why you're hiring us, as you know. So, yeah.
I agree. I heard the second part of what you said. I was a little preoccupied, but I'll try to answer in a way. It's also I think it's also important to share the emotions that you're trying to convey through your work. Let's say you're an author, you want to share this message, something that transport you to through the story or the idea, something, and we want to do the same but visually. So this is where we merge, where we work together. You do it through your words. We'll do it through the visual. So the emotions that or the so we say the same thing, aren't we?
Amazing. I think we have time for one last question. If anything's coming to mind. No. Okay. You guys answered everything.
Feel free to just talk to us afterwards, like in a less formal setting, and just, why not? Ask us questions later.
Absolutely. That's the joy of these types of conferences, is getting to just chat one-on-one and hear more about each other's work. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to moderate this panel with you three. You're all so talented, so thank you so much for your time and your expertise and sharing with us today. It was really, really interesting and lovely. So, nakamik.
Thank you. Nakamik.